Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I'm Michael Voris. There's a book floating around Catholic colleges like Notre Dame and Boston College these days, which is a bit duplicitous. Truth is, there are many, but hey, you got to start somewhere, so might as well start here. It's called Love Your Enemies, and it's written by Lisa Soul Cahill. More on her in a moment. The point of the book is to suggest that Jesus was a pacifist and to call into question the idea that violence is sometimes a necessary response, however regrettable. In the final analysis, the book is incomplete, if not downright poor scholarship. First of all, Jesus was not a pacifist, certainly not in the sense of that word that contemporary academics and liberals use it. Ask the money changers in the temple who were on the receiving end of Jesus' whip if he was a pacifist. You see, there's this continuing effort among such people to overlay secular meaning on theological precepts so as to make their agendas seem valid. Quoting many sources, Cahill goes into great depth discussing such notions as peace and the kingdom. She conflates theological precepts with geopolitical notions and produces a social gospel, a term that never appears, by the way, in the 2,000-year history of the church until the last century when the liberal ascendancy began. It is misleading in the least to suggest that because Jesus preached peace and love, that he somehow eschewed the notion of bodily self-defense, whether individually or nationally. He never broached the subject. The peace and love he preached was not a worldly geopolitical peace. In fact, he himself says so. Not as the world gives peace, do I give peace. To use the Beatitudes as a means to argue for geopolitical non-conflict is to entirely miss the point of the Beatitudes. Let's go through a little church history here. When Constantine was approaching Rome to battle Maxentius for control of the empire, he had a vision in which Christ told him to conquer in the sign of Christianity. Conquer, a military battle. The battle happened the next day at the Milvian Bridge, and Constantine went on to lead the empire and free the church. When the Catholic Navy defeated the Muslim Navy at Lepanto in the 16th century, it was the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe that led them into battle, as Pope Pius issued a command that all Europe pray the Rosary. That is where the Feast of Our Lady of Victory comes from in October, since renamed Our Lady of the Rosary. Now, time doesn't permit us to go into all the huge number of philosophical and logical and historical flaws here, not the least of which is not seriously addressing the vast array of objections to her arguments. That's what I mean by poor scholarship or incomplete scholarship. Cahill's primary concern seems to be to cast extreme doubt on the validity of the Church's traditional understanding of social relationships. Which brings us to Cahill herself. It is duplicitous in the extreme to pass off as scholarship a poorly reasoned opinion that church understanding with regard to violence needs to be rethought when she herself belongs to a group that supports a political agenda which is the most violent in the history of the world. Cahill sits on the advisory council of a group innocently called Catholics in Alliance for the Common Good. That group was formed as a means to garner Catholic votes for Obama by equating war and poverty with abortion, thus making it appear that abortion was no worse than war. Cahill's group refuses to acknowledge the moral superiority of the abortion issue to all other moral issues. To pretend that all violence is somehow equal is a mask over the truth. Abortion has been responsible for the violent deaths of more Americans than all the wars in this nation's history combined, including many other nations' wars combined. Yet, her group worked diligently and tirelessly to confuse these two issues, war and abortion, in the minds of Catholic voters so as to get Obama elected. They were obviously successful. To produce a book that suggests the true follower of Christ is at heart a pacifist in matters of war, while working behind the scenes to elect a man whose policies wage an unrelenting war against the most innocent and defenseless, is not scholarship. It's simply more of the same. Political propaganda and grandstanding disguised as scholarship, and using religion to promote an agenda which ultimately advocates violence against the weak and defenseless. You know, it's kind of funny because that's the very thing she condemns in Chapter 7 of her book when she covers the Crusades. I'm Michael Voris.
Please help us keep delivering these kinds of messages that so desperately need to be heard and acted on. Join RealCatholicTV.com today as a premium subscriber. Become immersed in the faith established by Jesus Christ. The Catholic Church is the only hope against evil because that is its God-given mission. As our Lord said, apart from me, you can do nothing. Join RealCatholicTV.com today as a premium subscriber and come to learn and love Christ more deeply.